Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Hi, welcome to the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I am Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. Today we have Rachael Ikins, who has published 3 books with Finishing Line Press by the titles of Transplanted, God Considered the Horizon, and Historious, Stories of Survival. She also did an honorarium workshop in Lismore, Ireland. Since then, she has published 2 other poetry books and a mixed genre memoir with Claire Songbirds Publishing. Thank you for joining us today, Rachael. How are you?
It's great to be here, Dustin. It's wonderful to meet you after all these years. Thank you for having me.
Quite welcome. It's wonderful to talk to you. And I see that you have a good collection, a good solid collection of books behind you there. Are those your books?
Those are all my books. Yep.
Absolutely interesting. So
There's the close-up.
Close up. There you go. So tell us a little bit about your titles with Finishing Line Press. You said it says you have 3. What sort of themes do they encompass, and how do you think you approach them aesthetically?
Well, my first 3 books were done with Foothills Publishing, and then I published my first Finishing Line book, which was called Transplanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a copy of it. I sold them all, but it was about a time in my life where I had my marriage had ended and I was starting a new relationship, and I had moved geographically to a new place. And so it was kind of like about being transplanted and starting over.
Mm-hmm. So that was there was that one, and then you had 2 others with Finishing Line.
Yeah, this one is God Considered the Horizon, was the second one. And one of the things that Finishing Line did for me was I'm also a visual artist. I do photography and mixed media, painting and collaging and drawing. So all of my covers of all my books except one, through all 4 publishers, are my artwork. And God Considered the Horizon is kind of like going through the seasons, not just of the year, but of a person's life.
Right.
And it's very related to nature. Nature played a really important and plays a very important role in my life. When I was little, I was born in Skaneateles, New York, at the head of Skaneateles Lake. We had a camp there, and we would spend 8 weeks every summer on 60 acres of land that was ours. And so I was all the time either in the woods or in the water. And I'm sure that's where my first poet self started, you know. I still find a great deal of peace in the natural world, what's left of it.
Right.
And then my third one was after God Considered the Horizon. I received my honorarium for that once in a lifetime fabulous opportunity to do a broad writers conference with Finishing Line in Lismore Castle in Ireland, and talk about a fairy tale and talk about meeting really important people. One of the poets who has always influenced me is Marge Piercy, and I also got to do a workshop with her on Cape Cod. But I met Patricia Smith in Lismore, Ireland. I took a poetry workshop with her, and in the evenings, all of the workshop leaders, who were all very well-known writers, would read, and I got to be the intro band for her, and that was really fabulous.
Interesting. So you were the opening act for the headliners there.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from her about how to present poetry.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful opportunity and an excellent experience to to have to work with other poets, especially if they're, prestigious, award-winning and prominent names. They can be a lot of fun to talk to as well as learn from. And of course, they're not there for, they didn't get there just by chance. They have a knack. They have, some expertise that they can impart, I think. So I'm sure you probably learned quite a bit from those guys.
Yeah, I also took flash fiction with Ethel Rohan then, and with Jane Smiley, I studied novel. And it was just very awesome, the setting to be in an actual real castle,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's fascinating too. Yeah.
Yeah, with butlers. They had 7 butlers.
Sounds like a really expensive process there too. But you also have a memoir. Are you still working on that, or is that something you've completed?
I have this memoir, Eating the Sun, which was published by Claire Songbird's publishing house. In 2018, I became a Claire Songbird's poet. This Just Two Girls was my first full-length collection of poetry, and it won an Independent Book Award for poetry, and has a pushcart nominated poem in it. Eating the Sun, my husband's and my love story. He's passed away, but it was very unusual because he was my chest surgeon, and he took out 1/3 of my right lung that had a big infection in it. But he loved poetry, and so there I was, 27, terrified that summer, writing poetry like mad in my little hospital room, waiting to know, was I going to have surgery? Could I go home? Whatever. And then I met him, and I wrote a poem about him, which I wish I still had, but I don't. I gave it to him, and he carried it for 6 months in his pocket. And after 6 months, we started seeing each other. And so 2 summers ago, we love to cook, we love to garden. So Eating the Sun is, it has a narrative, but it's broken into spring, summer, winter, and fall. And then it has poems relevant to each season. And it also has recipes that we invented. He was a fabulous, fabulous chef, and things we raised in the garden. And it also has some illustrations that are my artwork. And this one, not all my Claire Songbird's books are on Amazon, but Eating the Sun is, and so is For Kate, which is a chapbook. When I lost my cat, Katie, whether you're an animal person or not, loss is loss. And for those of us who do have animal family members, if it's a significant one, the loss can be just as devastating. And this was a real way for me to manage my grief, because she was special.
Right. It's a memoir of your pet, and it's
no, this is a chapbook.
It's a chapbook of it, so it's poetry.
Yeah, this is all poetry. And then my other book, this is a fantasy. This was with Log Cabin Books, which is a small mid-level publisher in New York State. It's illustrated with some of my drawings, and I did not do this cover art. He had hired a cover artist, graphic designer, but it's a fantasy. Dragons are the protagonists, and it's a lot about family, the importance of love, friendship. I deal with issues like bullying, ecology. All of my values are in this book. And, it was one of the best book launch parties I ever had when that book was launched. There was standing room only. It was pretty nice.
Oh, wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. So what is your writing process like? Do you write daily, or do you set a schedule, or do you just write when there's sort of that spark that happens and inspiration?
Well, some of the basic stories from Totems I wrote in the 90s, and in the decade of the 90s, I was on a lot of psychiatric medications in huge numbers and many bizarre combinations. I couldn't write poetry then, and I thought I did not write, but years later, I found these stories that I was writing. I was just writing something different. But it was so awful that the poetry was gone, because for me, it has to do with a feeling that I feel it. So when I started healing, because I almost died getting off all those medications, and I had a lot of hard work to do healing and also putting my life back together. But I vowed I would never, ever let anything or anyone take away my poetry again. And so I started not just writing when inspiration hit me, but also assigning myself homework. Okay, there's a woman walking down the road, write a poem about her. Because I needed to know that I could always tap into that again, even if the feeling wasn't there.
Interesting. So it's a matter of perseverance and survival, really.
It is. Poetry was through that period. I mean, I've had a life with a tremendous amount of upheaval and hardship, and I wanted to be a poet since I've been a poet since I was 7. And I won't recite my 7-year-old poem to you, but I still know it. And it's all I ever wanted to be. And unfortunately, when I was getting ready to go to college, and I have a personality that at that time I wasn't very rebellious with my parents. My mom had majored in fine arts and never did anything with it. So all my parents said was, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. Of course, now all of us now know most of us can't make money being a poet, or not a lot of it. So my mother did have, but if I'd had a bachelor's in English, my life would have gone a different way. However, I had a bunch of, important people, teachers, mentors who showed up at different times. I wrote all the time, and I was someone just waiting for my smartphone, because when my process, I write kind of all the time. And when people say to me, oh gosh, I never know when to write. I never make time to sit down, or that's one. And the other thing is, oh gosh, I never have time to submit. That's such a, I say, do you have a smartphone? Yeah. Do you use the bathroom? Yeah. Okay. So do you take your phone in with you when you're sitting there? Yeah. Okay. So now you're going to be sitting for a few minutes. Open that phone, either go into your notebook app or Word. You can compose something, or look through calls for submission. It sounds very, silly, but it works because so many people are so busy.
Right.
And we do kind of tend to have our phones with us most of the.
They're kind of tethered to us. The current age, it's like, and a lot of people, depending on how you use it, you could be scrolling social media, or checking emails, or you could be writing a poem, or a storyline of some kind.
And I use what is it that I use? OneDrive. A young friend told me about OneDrive, and she described it as a mighty tool. So I have OneDrive in my phone, so I can be, like out taking a walk and access the files in my computer of my poetry. And so that I started this summer, because I have this pile of gorgeous journals that many of us have, because poets seem to like to collect them. And I was like, finally take a few off the pile and remember how to use a pen, how to. And so I've started writing some also by hand, just, why should those journals go to waste?
Right. So what do you, kind of an interesting question I had, you go back to your poetry about, when you were in the hospital, and when you met your husband. What do you think of occasional poems, the poems that are written for specific occasions, like a birthday, or something of that nature? Like, a lot of poets do write those, and there's some that are pretty famous. So what do you think of that?
I have written many.
Okay.
Excuse me. And one of the things that has kind of become one of my missions with my writing is grief, not
Mhm.
exactly counseling, but being supportive for someone who's mourning a loss. And it's just evolved that I have written poetry for quite a few people's services, and for all of the members of my family who died, I read poetry at their funerals. And when my mother died, Historias, that other book from Finishing Line, was was compiled after my mother passed away, and it was made up of poems that I wrote about her as she got sicker and failed. And she never wanted to talk about it, but she loved my poetry at that point. She was almost 90. And so my poems were a way for the two of us to talk about her dying. That became that book, Historia, Stories of Survival. And I had written some Spanish language poems in college that I had found in my files. And I asked Leah Maines if it would be okay for her to look at some. And so they were in that book too.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, kind of another question on the role of poetry. What role do you think social justice plays in poetry?
Oh, I think social, and not all poets agree with me, but I think social justice is really important, a thing that poets have a microphone for a very long time. And of course, I don't know how long it really takes for a poet in a poet's lifetime to find your voice, because we're always trying to grow and improve. But for a very long time, when I was younger, I thought I just wrote pretty picture nature poems, you know.
Mhm.
And in the last years, I've started writing a lot, and I'm in a lot of anthologies about climate change. And then I watched the George Floyd murder trial every day. And actually during the election, I wrote a poem about voting. And after the conviction, well, no, during the trial, at some point, I wrote this poem that was accepted and published in Broadkill Review called I Just. It's a list poem, and it manages to all of the Black men and women who were murdered by police, you know, buying cigarettes or, you know, whatever life regular thing they were just out doing. So that was the first. And by now, I have enough. I made a micro chapbook manuscript and I submitted it last week. The most recent one I wrote is called Here. It's ekphrastic to a painting in an art exhibit in a gallery near us, and I did it with my branch of the Pen Women. And it too is like it's just a witnessing of the things that Black people have gone through from the beginning to get anywhere. So I think whatever you believe in strongly, if you're a poet, then you have an extra tool to make a difference.
Right. That's definitely the case. I mean, I think that, you have to have convictions and passions in order to write effective poetry. So that's definitely an observation. I mean, even if it's a religious conviction of some sort, or a social justice convinced of a cause, and in this day and age, we've got so many causes that are wrapping around each other. So it's almost like convulsion going on in these different sectors of life, and how we're facing a lot of crises at the same time. So I think it's good to write. It's good to write on all the topics and all the things that are interesting us right now that are going on. So that's definitely an interesting observation. So would you like to share some?
That was how we met, Dustin, because I
Yes.
submitted to your Transcendent Zero anthology. The poems I submitted were about the sexual molestation by the clergy.
Right.
That was where we met, so to speak.
Right. I do remember that very well. So would you like to share some poetry with us?
Sure. I had books open all over the place last night trying to pick two. They
Mhm.
all want to be read.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. The poems they like to call to you sometimes. You're not quite
Yep.
sure which one is more important for the occasion and which one it should be take a sideline, you know. So whenever you're ready.
So this one, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, and this one is from God Considered the Horizon, and it's called Woman. My lion-haired woman, silver lit with red hair woman. Your brows remember girlhood, punctuate your face. Their soft pink arches visible only in pale north light from our bedroom window this winter's afternoon, like magic. Your sleepy slanting cat's eyes, sharp chinned, lick your lips, smile, woman. Shag of fire between your legs glows hot orange, even on this dusky day. Through autumn cold descent, I fear spreading winter flatness every year, December's bottom. But you like me. My fingers can grip your mane. Halfway through November, a month before equinox, coldest cold ahead, the trees, naked as I, combed clean of sweat and memory, they sing a dark song while I spread my stark black branches, arrange them over evening's coverlet, and wait for your falling spark, my dry tinder.
There's some interesting associations going on there for, I mean, people associate love and passion with fire, and obviously you're doing that towards the end of the poem. Quite interesting to write a love poem. It's a really interesting experience. I think it's very deep. It's a very passionate affair, and it's very beautiful. I think were you also in the Smitten anthology by any chance?
I am in the Smitten anthology. Yep.
Thought so, yeah. I remember seeing your name in that. So that was a really fascinating approach to an age-old question, of women loving women, and what I mean, it was a brilliant idea on their part to do that anthology, I think, and that was a really beautiful book. So would you like to share another poem?
I have two of their books behind me. You can't see them, but I'm in Through the Looking Glass, and then I'm in the But You Don't Look Sick. And you and I are both fans of Shout Out to Candace.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from Just Two Girls, I'm going to read another love poem.
Okay.
And this was sort of a challenge to myself. It's from the point of view of a gay man talking about his lover. You told me a story about the long ago day when he sat on a low stool, a footstool or ottoman to a leather recliner. You ironed your wife's button-down Oxford shirt, the kind you search for yourself, but can never find with short enough sleeves or the collar with buttons unless you go into boys' sizes, which creates a lot of other problems, your being a slight man and all. Your wife was at work while you smoothed wrinkles, while from his perch near your feet, your friend whispered, I had a dream last night. And in the obvious pause, your heart leapt, your breath hitched around. You did you? Both of you knowing a door had opened, something irrevocable, like losing your balance on the diving board down at the pool where you both bring your children to swim after school. Yes, on your wife's living room rug, a tabby cat asleep in the window, you let him touch you with his hands, his lips. He tugged the waist of your jeans off your hips with his teeth. He spoke languages with his tongue that you'd only imagined. If these things had not happened 24 years ago, we wouldn't be here today. You have stormed upstairs, throwing angry words sotto voce down at me. What of me? I opened the living room closet, removed the 48-year-old ironing board. I reset your iron, lay a light charcoal pair of your cargo shorts as carefully as a baby before me. I lick my finger, test the heat. You often say ironing cargo shorts is a pain in the ass because of all the fucking pockets, etc. Me personally, I don't think they should be ironed. We differ that way. I consider you as I press the seams between the legs. All sorts of words I do not say gather like piled laundry behind my mustache.
There's quite detailed, a lot of interesting details in that deal with domestic life, and I think it's fascinating that you're able to get in the head of these people and kind of represent what they're feeling and thinking. That's what the writer's gift, is the empathy, and it's definitely very different step inside of a different gender, especially when it's you're looking at a gay man basically that is recognizing he's first becoming gay, he's first realizing he's gay. So that's a very fascinating approach to take in that poem. I enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you.
So my next question is, what you work with as a associate editor at Claire Songbirds, I believe.
Yes.
What is the mission there, and what do you specifically, what kind of work do you look for? Do you appreciate when you're looking through manuscripts?
Well, our mission is to provide a print forum for the creation of limited edition fine art from poets and writers, both established and emerging. I could read you the whole thing, but we really, the business, the publishing house was founded by two women.
Mm-hmm.
And they invited me to be associate editor because we got swamped with submissions. And so through them, I was you can kind of see it behind me. There's a book with an American flag on it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be the editor for that collection, which was all military. Either if you're a veteran, you had a soldier in your family, or you're an active duty soldier. We reached out for artwork and poetry, and it was an amazing experience to be that editor. And what I looked for, or what I do look for, I look for something that, I look for use of language. I look for originality.
Mm-hmm.
I look for things that are well put together. And the thing, sometimes, I'm sure you know this yourself, you get submissions that you're not going to accept them, but something speaks to you about this particular poet. And so sometimes I will write a note. I've gotten those myself. And I've always appreciated an editor who took the time to say, you know what, we're sorry that your work isn't really a fit for us, but, keep going. You can do it. It just feels important to me. It's always been important to me because my battle to be what I am has been a battle for a long time. And now it's not a battle, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
Although I like to joke, I'm the greatest poet never known. Aren't we all? But
Right.
I think it's really important to help others because of
Mm-hmm.
all the professions in the world, being a writer is really the obstacles that are in front of you and the determination you have to have. And you can work 3 years on a manuscript. You can spend another year trying to find an agent if you're going to go that route. You have to get your thousands of followers on social media, and then maybe the agent will take 5 years before they find a publishing house that wants it if you don't go the small publishing route. But even if you do go small, you can put years of your life and soul into a piece of your work, and there's absolutely no guarantee that anyone's ever going to publish it. So I think we have to be a special brand of crazy, us writers. And when I was in the Jane Smiley workshop, she the first day she asked us, okay, I want you each to say why you write. So, I immediately, my poet self, I was like, oh God, I think of something very ethereal, and so is everyone else. So we go around the table and, I write because it's my calling. I write because it's like part of me. I write because, I'm part of the woods, whatever. And then Jane goes, I write to make money. Wow. We were like stunned. And she said, if you're not writing to make money in there somewhere, why are you doing it? Because it's so much work. And I mean, I don't make a lot of money. I make a little money here and there, you know how it goes. But but that stuck with me. I like Jane a lot. I had a novel manuscript that I haven't done anything else with yet, but she said to keep going. But it also helped me because, people will ask you questions. I have had strangers reach out to me and start asking me, well, will you look at my poetry, or will you do this or that? And time is money, and I don't have a problem at all with publishers or editors who ask a reading fee. Somebody has to sit down and take time out away from their job or their family or whatever to read what you sent them. So if the place is asking for $3 or whatever, that's not a hardship to me. I think they deserve it. Working inside a publishing house, I've gotten a very different education about how much time a publisher can put into formatting and all of the stuff that they do, and get very little return financially. That was one of the unique things about Finishing Line that I really liked. It terrified me with my first book, but when they started sending me packets about how to market my work, that was the beginning of my education of how to market my work, because it's amazing the poets in particular who don't understand that it doesn't stop with you writing it and it's accepted. Now it's your job. If you don't care enough to market it, why should anyone else? So I've always been, I think that's really a good thing about Finishing Line, and anyone who's ever asked me to submit to them, I've always said, great choice, and you will learn a lot about how to market your work. It won't just be, you publish your book and that's that. And, Leah has been fabulous reaching out to me, like to contact you and other opportunities, and the honorarium they gave, so that, that castle workshop, that was a once in a lifetime thing. It was expensive. Yeah, I'll never do it again, but I'll never forget it either.
Right.
I'm very grateful to her.
It sounds like it was really exciting, actually. I wish I could do something like that. It would be fun. Get out of the house in the least, I think we have a few more minutes. I was going to ask a kind of silly question, and then you can do like a thank you and a advice for authors kind of section at the end. So it's kind of a funny question, and if you want to just defer on it, that's fine. How do you tease a poet? Like in the sense of like poking kidding with. What's the best way to tease a poet, in your opinion?
Honestly, I never thought about it.
Brain, one of those brainstormers,
Mean teasing or fun teasing?
Fun teasing.
Oh, well, I could think of like Maggie Smith has a line in Downton Abbey where when Mary is interested in Matthew and Maggie Smith is talking to somebody and she rolls her eyes and says, well, it could have been worse. It could have been a poet. That's a way to tease poets,
Right. Does everything have to be profound?
Yeah. And that's another thing too, like so many people think that poets, like we're all serious doom and gloom, crying sad poems. Some of the poems behind that people have liked the best have been humorous. Made them laugh. Poets can laugh. We can. Just have to remember to.
Right. So do you want to do thank a couple of people and then maybe offer some words to fellow writers as to encourage them to keep writing?
Oh my goodness, the first person I would like to thank is my 8th grade English teacher, Elizabeth Patton, who is a poet and a short story writer and an artist, a visual artist.
Mhm.
She's in the hospital. Well, she's in rehab recovering from, of all things, on Mother's Day, she got viral meningitis, which is from the chickenpox virus. So get your shingle shots, people. She was the very first person who introduced me to poetry in 8th grade, and we had the unit on writing our own. And one of the first 2 poems that got published is in one of these books. I remember she leaned over my shoulder and her hand was on my arm, and she said, "Yep, you're a poet." And that really and then that summer she sent 2 of my poems to Encore magazine in New Mexico, unbeknownst to me. And I was down at our camp by myself, and the phone rang one noon. It was her husband calling to tell me that they'd been accepted. So I toasted the lake with a little illicit wine. I was 14 at the time. And then after
we don't recommend that, but
right. And I don't
Right.
have much tolerance for alcohol, so
right.
the next really important person in my personal journey, her name is Patricia Dickinson. She's a retired library director of the Canastota Public Library, which is a most amazing little Carnegie library in the tiny town of Canastota, New York. And after the 90s and all of that, I ended up living out in the boonies in a little, you wouldn't even see it on the map. And somehow I found the Canastota Writers Group, and that was my first adult writers group ever. I was terrified. And she was the moderator, and I would read anything when it was my turn. And I guess somebody said to her, a mutual friend told her, someone said, "Why do you believe in her?" And Tish said, "Oh, she's going to go places. I believe in her." And I have like notes from her stuck to my refrigerator from through the years.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
Okay.
we only had just a little bit of time. So I wanted to go ahead and close the show out. But thank you so much, Rachael, for joining us today. It's been a wonderful pleasure talking with you. And I'm Dustin Pickering, the host of New York Parrot. And we'll look forward to our anthology coming out, everybody out there. Some of her names were misspelled, and we'll correct that. Don't worry. We've been getting people saying, "Oh, my name was misspelled." Well, we'll fix it. Don't worry. So that'll be not be a problem. That'll be coming out in early August. So keep an eye out for that. And donations are still acceptable at PayPal.me/NYParrot. That's capital NY Parrot with a lowercase Parrot with lowercase with the last few letters of Parrot. So this is just going to be the series 1 anthology. So we will do more with other guests and other people we've published. And we're looking for 1 million subscribers. That can be you out there. If you're watching right now and you're not a subscriber, we want you to subscribe and share our content.
Hi.
So please do, absolutely. We need our cheerleaders, we need our people behind us. So thank you all for sharing our stuff and sharing our content and for your donations. Thanks to our viewers out there. And thank you, Rachael, for joining us today. And keep an eye out for further content from us. And like I said, subscribe. We're looking for 1 million, so keep an eye out. Thank you again, Rachael. This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I'm Dustin Pickering. You'll see us tomorrow again, same place on the YouTube.